diving birds of prey, fast action, high frame rates. This is definitely not what an A7R series camera is supposed to be like. But Sony did the unthinkable and turned the A7R6 into a stacked sensor action monster. 67 megapixels, 30 frames per second, there's no camera quite like it. I watched it lock onto a kite mid-dive and deliver images I simply thought weren't possible on an R7 series camera. But then the light got low and I pointed it at a small fairy wren, and that's where things got complicated. So can the A7R6 truly do it all? The specs definitely say yes, but my memory cards say it's not that simple. I'm your Wegener and I've been a professional bird photographer for over 20 years, creating unique photos and videos, and now teaching you to do the same. The A7R6 is hands down Sony's best handling camera. Better grip, better feel, better menu. Small changes that all add up to make a big difference in the field. The only thing missing is the front C5 button that we can see on the A12 or A9 III that makes it harder to use the speed boost function. Inside sits a fully stacked 68 megapixel BSI sensor shooting up to 30 frames per second and 14-bit RAWs in the electronic shutter mode, and up to 10 frames per second and 14-bit RAWs with the mechanical shutter. To handle that file size, Sony equipped the A7R6 with dual CIF Express Type A card slots that can also take SD cards. Sony also offers a brand new battery grip for the A7R6, and if you shoot a lot of action or long sessions, I highly recommend it. It's well built and makes handling the camera even better. To power the camera, Sony introduced a completely new battery design. And to be honest, this is the best and most frustrating part about this camera. Best because I was able to shoot over 7,000 images in one morning session and was still left with over 50% charge on both batteries in my battery grip. But it's also frustrating because none of the old batteries will work in the new camera or the grip, and the new batteries are also not backwards compatible, so you're basically starting from scratch. There's also a brand new dual battery charger coming out that can charge 2 of the new batteries to 100% in under 2 hours. In terms of size, weight, and how the camera feels in your hand, it's very similar to an A12 or an A9 III, but the new batteries may add a little bit of extra weight. What stands out is the fantastic bright and crisp rear LCD screen with the best design on the market, allowing movement in virtually every direction. And we also have some light up buttons on the camera that make it easier to work with it in the dark. The real surprise though is the 9 million dot EVF. It's essentially the same specs as we also see in the A9 III and the A12, but in the field it feels noticeably more natural with cleaner and better colors, and it also doesn't go into low-res mode as often as those two other cameras. And of course it's blackout free, so you never lose sight of your subject. Sony also made small but meaningful changes to the menu. There's now an optional buffer indicator on the left side of the EVF showing remaining shots, which is a real lifesaver in certain action situations. You can now also set the memory recall function to automatically update and save all your changes on the go. And it's also much easier now to access certain submenus directly from the custom button menu without having to leave it and go into the main menu first. So overall, a great improvement in functionality. And of course, I will very soon have a settings video with the best settings for the A7R6 coming out, as well as my PDF setup guide and custom setup file. To appreciate how exceptional this camera is, look where the A7R series came from. The A7R4 and 5 were nice cameras with high resolution, good image quality, but quite slow and riddled with rolling shutter. The A7R6 changes all of that. The camera doesn't just improve upon its predecessors. It puts the A7R series in a whole new category and actually makes it quite suitable for wildlife and action photography. At a price of around $4,500 US, this camera is serious value for money and even rivals the much more expensive flagship A12. Rolling shutter is always a concern with high megapixel sensors, even stacked ones. But on the A7R6 it's minimal. Only noticed minor image wobbles and some distortion on the wingtips of the birds, but overall it was very good. Less than on the A7 V and more than on the A12, meaning that it's definitely fully usable and allowing me to exclusively use the electronic shutter to take full advantage of the camera's speed. For this review I used the A7R6 on a variety of great Sony lenses. One of them was the new 100-400 f4.5. I have a full review of that lens coming out soon, showing you how it works with the teleconverters and how it compares to Sony's current other lenses. And it may actually replace 2 or 3 of your current lenses, so keep an eye out for that. Sony has also quietly improved white balance and color rendering. The files come out with natural pleasing colors, and that cool blue-green cast we often see on other Sony bodies, it's largely gone, which is definitely a welcome change. The IBIS is also quite good on this camera, and in particular with lenses like the 2.8-300 or the new 100-400, it was quite stable. Handheld low shutter speeds can be achieved relatively easily, but handheld video is still a bit shaky, and for serious work a tripod or gimbal is recommended. For one of the first shoots, I took the A7R6 to the local mangroves. Low light, small birds, constant movement, and branches everywhere that try to distract the camera. To freeze the movement of these tiny subjects, I had to push the ISO hard, adding another layer of challenge. And the results here were mixed. Sometimes the lens and camera instantly locked onto my target, tracked it well throughout my viewfinder and gave me great results. But at other times it simply couldn't decide what's a bird, what's a leaf, and I lost shots because of it. Including this scene of a stunning male variegated fairy wren that gave me a perfect opportunity, but the camera was not able to lock onto it before it took off. The struggles were the most pronounced in the wide autofocus area, and using spot or spot extra large with tracking definitely helps, but even then it couldn't eliminate the random misses entirely. This isn't unique to the A7R6 though. Sony's action tracking is usually extraordinary and the best on the market, as we will see shortly, but initial subject detection and autofocus for busy scenes or birds smaller in the frame definitely still have a lot of room for improvement. In terms of autofocus consistency, the A7R6 fell slightly behind the A12 and the A9 III, who do 120 autofocus calculations per second, whereas the A7R6, just like the A7 V, do 60 calculations per second. That's one of the key differences between the A7R6 and the flagship bodies. Despite the autofocus challenges, I still managed to come away with some stunning images from that shoot. What immediately stands out when working with the files is the sheer size of them. Nearly 10,000 pixels on the long side. This is basically the APS-C crop camera we've all been waiting for, built into a full frame body. Even in 1.5 crop mode, we're still working with 30 megapixels, so the room for cropping and the creative flexibility is extraordinary. This camera changes how you can shoot and crop and will be a dream for many birders. But here's where something unexpected started nagging at me. After going through the first few thousand images I had taken with the camera, the files were just not blowing me away. Sharp, yes. Detailed, yes. But when I zoomed into the images, I just wasn't finding that mind-blowing detail you would expect to see in a 68 megapixel file. So something wasn't adding up and I needed to find out why. To really push the camera, I headed to one of my favorite beaches, hoping to find fishing kites and eagles, and I was not disappointed. A group of fishermen had just finished netting baitfish and left a few of them on the beach. So I quickly set up, and over the next 30 minutes I was surrounded by incredible action. Terns, sea eagles, brahmi kites, swamp harriers, all diving and grabbing fish right in front of me. One of those spectacular wildlife moments we all truly live for as photographers. And here the A7R6 with the new 100-400 did an amazing job. They locked right onto my targets, tracked them very well throughout my viewfinder against varying backgrounds, and gave me some stunning results. The fast sensor, minimal rolling shutter, great autofocus tracking, everything the spec sheet promised, they delivered. A little while later, I spotted an osprey hovering in the sky, so I quickly grabbed a 400-800mm lens for some extra reach and locked onto the bird just the moment when it started to dive into the ocean. A spectacular scene, and on the way out I got a few nice images of the bird flying past me with the fish that it had caught. And when I reviewed these files, something caught my attention. The beach images looked significantly better than my earlier mangrove shots. Sharper, more detailed, and exactly that kind of 68 megapixel magic I had been waiting for. So what was the difference? Light and ISO. Up to that point I had mainly shot in low light and ISO above 3200, which seemed to have a big impact on this pixel-packed sensor. So when a pelican swam by, I did a quick test. One shot at low ISO with a slower shutter speed, and one shot at ISO 6400 with a fast shutter speed. Same bird, same light, same lens, taken less than 1 second apart. And the results were stark. The low ISO file was breathtaking. Great sharpness, every feather strand visible, exactly what you would expect from a high megapixel sensor. But the high ISO file lacked some of the brilliance, details, and extreme sharpness. Now on every camera image quality gets worse the higher the ISO gets, but on this camera it was quite noticeable. I tested this further and the pattern was consistent. Up to ISO 1600 in good light, the results are second to none. Amazing detail, great sharpness. But once you push the camera far beyond that, it starts to show up in the files. On a slower lens like the 400 to 800 that's wide open at f8, I found myself in a constant mental battle. Should I push the ISO to get faster shutter speeds and freeze movement? Or should I use the lowest possible ISO to maximize image quality but risk getting blurry shots? Don't get me wrong, the files at ISO 6400 or even beyond that still clean up well with a good noise reduction and editing workflow, but they lack some of the brilliance that makes this camera special. And no matter what camera you're using, it's not only important to set it up correctly so you get the best possible performance like I show you in my setup guides linked below, but it's also crucially important to learn the right editing skills to transform the raw files we take in the field into stunning final masterpieces. And to help you to get amazing results quickly, I developed my Lightroom and next generation Photoshop masterclasses. In my masterclasses, I teach you my easy to follow workflow step by step and show you the most important tools and techniques needed to master image editing and get amazing results from your own raw files ready to be shared with the world. But of course you won't just be watching, because I'm also providing you with my own raw files so you can edit right alongside me. And if you're not sure if my masterclasses are worth it or the right fit for you, check out some of the amazing reviews that I receive on a daily basis from many happy students who I've helped to transform their editing lives, who now get great results with ease and actually enjoy the editing process. So if you need help to set up your camera for maximum performance, or finally want to get better at image editing and truly make your raw files shine, check out my setup guides and masterclasses linked down there in the description. I know they will help you a lot. There's one more consideration for fast action work, and that is the buffer size. In raw lossless or raw high quality formats, we get about 60 to 70 images before we hit the buffer, which is roughly 2 seconds of shooting at 30 frames per second. And from my experience, that's usually not big enough for serious action work. But if we switch to compressed RAWs, we get that up to about 150 to 160 frames per second before we hit the buffer, which is about 5 seconds of shooting, which is enough for most situations, but you definitely have to be conscious how long you hold down that shutter button. The main downside with compressed RAWs is that we're giving up a little bit of image quality because the files are only 12-bit. However, for me it's the only way to take advantage of the camera's 30 frames per second and the fast action capabilities. And according to Sony, there might actually be another reason to use compressed RAWs instead of the other formats, because the autofocus might perform better. If you're using RAW lossless or RAW HQ, the A7R6 will only perform up to 30 autofocusing calculations per second, whereas in compressed RAW it will perform up to 60 calculations per second. So to me on this camera, and in reality on almost all cameras, using compressed RAW is the only way to go for wildlife photography. Fast action is also where Sony's new buffer indicator in the EVF earns its place. Keeping one eye on the buffer and being aware when I might run out of shots generally help me to time my bursts better. A color-coded system would be even better, going from green to yellow to red, but even in white I found it extremely helpful. Weather sealing on the A7R6 also seems to be fine. Now I wouldn't just let it sit in the rain, but when I was shooting on the beach there was a lot of ocean spray and I got rained on a few times, and after just wiping down the camera it still kept working flawlessly. What you have to be aware of when getting this camera is that you will need processing power. I instantly noticed how much longer it took to load the files and load the 100% previews on my fully spec'd out M1 Max MacBook Pro compared to like a 45 or 50 megapixel file. So if you're dealing with a slow computer and already struggle with some smaller files, this camera might put serious strain on your system. And you also need to bring enough memory cards. I routinely filled 512 gigabytes when out and about with that camera, especially when I was shooting action, so I'd always have at least 2 or 3 of them with me. Just like all recent Sony cameras, the A7R6 also comes with a fantastic implementation of pre-capture. It's easy to set up, works reliably, and will get you shots that you otherwise would have missed. Sony's implementation of pre-capture is currently the best in the industry, and it's a must-have feature for me. What we haven't touched on yet is video, and here the A7R6 offers us fantastic options. We get oversampled 4K from 5K up to 120 frames per second, optionally uncropped, and we can also shoot in 8K. I was lucky enough to find a small family of masked lapwings in a local park who had 2 tiny babies. After a slow and low approach, I was able to get some intimate footage of the 2 babies ducking under the mum's wing for protection and some body heat. Just a heartwarming scene, and the camera here did great. The footage I got looks lovely, and the autofocus was able to lock on and track the mum and the babies really well, even amongst the grass. Getting crisp and detailed footage with super high megapixel sensors in 4K can always be a bit of a challenge, but overall the camera here did well. In log format, I seem to be working with a base ISO of 800 and then 5000. It wasn't very hot, so I didn't have any overheating issues, but even after an extended period of filming, the camera was still fine, and I was also amazed how long the batteries actually lasted. Having the option to now automatically update memory recall in the A7R6 also made it so much easier to switch from photo to video, because I could save all my favorite photo settings as memory recall 1, and then all my favorite video settings as memory recall 1 for video. And then instead of using manual mode on the top dial, I dialed the camera to 1, and whenever I switched from photo to video, the camera would instantly remember the last settings I've used, allowing me to seamlessly switch between photos and videos, something that used to be much harder on other Sony cameras. All in all, my time with the A7R6 was remarkable. It was a joy to work with and one of the best and most refined cameras I've ever used. The better handling, the stacked sensor, the new battery system. Sony has taken their high-resolution workhorse and turned it into something that basically does it all. The cropping ability, the speed, the breathtaking image quality in good light, it all comes together beautifully. The autofocus overall performed well, especially for action, but initial subject detection can still get confused at times, and the negative effect of high ISOs on image quality could be an issue at times. Not a deal breaker, but something to be aware of when you're considering this camera. How well this camera works for you will entirely depend on how you shoot and what lenses you're planning to use. If you often find yourself shooting in low light situations or use slow lenses on a regular basis, this camera can present a bit of a challenge. But if you're after breathtaking resolution, extraordinary cropping capabilities, and the added bonus of a genuine action camera all in one body, then the A7R6 delivers like nothing else on the market. If you find this review helpful, a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated, and if you consider pre-ordering your camera, you can do that through the links that I've linked for you down there in the description. My review of the new Sony 100-400 f4.5 lens is coming in the next few days as well, and if you're wondering how the A7R6 compares to the A12, the A7V and some of their Sony and Canon competitors, those videos are coming up very soon as well, so keep an eye out for those. And if you struggle setting up your camera or don't get the results from your RAW files that you're after, check out my Lightroom and Photoshop masterclasses as well as my Canon, Nikon and Sony setup guides. I know they will help you a lot and they're linked for you down there in the description. So thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!